Where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. In the beginning, before stone touched stone to raise a pyramid, before a single pharaoh wore the double crown, there was only the idea, a whisper in the collective soul of humanity, born from the relentless, sacred cycles of the world. Gaze into the deep velvet of the night, at that belt of stars known to some as Orion the Hunter. The ancients of the Nile saw a different figure there. They saw Sa, a glittering, eternal soul striding across the celestial river, the first and most profound portrait of the god we know as Osiris. His myth is not merely a story of a king who died and was reborn. It is the spiritual blueprint of Egypt itself, a divine drama written in the language of the fertile black soil, the life-giving inundation of the Nile, and the unyielding journey of the sun. It is a narrative of perfect order, a kingdom of lush abundance, shattered by a betrayal so profound it echoes through the millennia, setting into motion the very concepts of death, judgment, and the hope of an afterlife. We are about to trace the path of this green-skinned god, from his throne in the world of the living to his eternal kingdom in the West, to understand not just who he was, but what he represented, the fragile, precious balance between life and death, and the enduring human yearning for renewal. The origins of Osiris are as old as the civilization that worshipped him, rooted in the primordial soup of pre-dynastic beliefs. He emerged not as a fully formed king of the dead, but as a chthonic deity of fertility and agriculture, a god of the earth's bounty. His skin, depicted in the vibrant green of malachite or the deep black of fertile Nile silt, was his first and most telling attribute. He was the promise of the sprouting seed, the life that burst forth from decay. The earliest fragments of his worship point to a center in the delta city of Busiris, known in ancient times as Jeddu, a name forever linked to the Jed pillar, the symbol of his spine and of stability. Another powerful cult center flourished in Abydos, which would become the primary site of his veneration, a place of pilgrimage for over 3,000 years. Here, in the shifting sands of Upper Egypt, the Egyptians believed the head of Osiris was buried, making the land eternally sacred. Through the unification of Egypt and the consolidation of state religion during the Old Kingdom, Osiris began his transformation, absorbing the attributes of local deities like Khenti-Amentu, the foremost of the Westerners, a jackal god who guarded the realm of the dead. This syncretism was key, weaving older, simpler threads into a grander, more complex theological tapestry. By the time the pyramid texts were carved into the burial chambers of 5th and 6th dynasty pharaohs, Osiris had ascended to his central role. These spells, the oldest known religious texts in the world, are not mere funerary rites. They are a desperate poetic roadmap for the soul of the king. They reveal a cosmic drama where the deceased pharaoh must identify with Osiris to achieve resurrection. "O king," the spells declare, "you have not gone away dead, you have gone away alive." The king becomes Osiris, and Osiris becomes the king. This was a revolutionary development. Eternal life was no longer the sole privilege of the monarch. Through the democratization of the afterlife in the Middle Kingdom, accessible via the coffin texts and later the Book of the Dead, every justified individual could become an Osiris. His myth provided the template for every soul's journey. He was the first mummy, wrapped by the loving hands of Isis and Nephthys. He was the first soul to be judged before a council of gods. He was the proof that death was not an end, but a transition. A perilous journey, yes, but one with the promise of a blessed eternity in the field of reeds, a perfect, heavenly mirror of Egypt itself. The rituals dedicated to Osiris were among the most profound and emotionally charged in the Egyptian religious calendar. The most significant was the annual Mysteries of Osiris, a multi-day festival held during the month of Khoiak. This was not a simple prayer service. It was a massive, communal reenactment of his passion. The centerpiece was the creation of Osiris beds, small, anthropoid molds filled with Nile silt and planted with barley seeds. These gardens of Osiris were nurtured in the dark, and their sprouting was a potent symbol of the god's resurrection, a tangible piece of magic that every participant could witness. The festival culminated in a grand, solemn procession. The statue of the god, housed in his sacred bark, was carried from his temple by priests in leopard-skin robes. The air would be thick with the smoke of Kai-Fi incense, a complex blend of pine resin, raisins, and honey meant to soothe the gods. The sounds of the sistrum rattle and the mournful chants of priestesses filled the streets, as the community collectively mourned the death of their god, their wails echoing the grief of Isis. This public expression of sorrow was a crucial part of the ritual, a necessary prelude to the joyous celebration of his rebirth that would follow. But to understand the depth of this devotion, we must return to the beginning of the story, to the golden age known as the First Time, the Zep Tepi. It was said that in the dawn of the world, the sun god Ra placed Osiris upon the throne of Egypt to rule as its first pharaoh. His reign was a paradise of order and justice, of Ma'at perfectly upheld. He found the people of Egypt living as barbarians, and he taught them the sacred arts of civilization, the cultivation of wheat and barley, the rites of worship for the gods, the crafting of laws, and the reverence for all living things. He brought an end to cannibalism and gave humanity the gift of the vine. Where he walked, the desert bloomed. His queen was his sister, the great goddess Isis, whose wisdom and magic were his perfect complement. Together, they represented the ideal of kingship and kinship, a divine couple who established the very model for Egyptian society. Their kingdom was a verdant, peaceful land, a testament to the benevolent and life-giving nature of its ruler. Yet, in this perfection, a shadow was growing, a shadow born of jealousy and ambition. This shadow had a name, Set, the brother of Osiris. Where Osiris was order, fertility, and the black land, Set was the embodiment of chaos, the desert's stark violence, and the thunderstorm's destructive power. He was a necessary force, a god of strength in foreign lands, but his heart festered with envy. He coveted the throne, the adoration of the people, and the love of Isis. The ancient texts describe his plot with chilling simplicity. He hosted a great feast in honor of his brother. The atmosphere was one of false camaraderie, the hall filled with laughter and music, masking the sinister intent. After the wine had flowed freely, Set presented a magnificent object, a chest crafted from the finest cedar and inlaid with ebony and precious stones. He proclaimed with a deceiver's smile that he would gift this chest to whomever it fit perfectly. One by one, the guests tried, but none could fill its space. Finally, Osiris, trusting and unsuspecting, lay down within it. It was a perfect fit. In that instant, Set's accomplices rushed forward. They slammed the lid shut, sealed it with molten lead, and cast the chest, now a sarcophagus containing the living king, into the swift currents of the Nile. The coffin, carrying the body of the dead king, did not sink. It was carried by the Nile's currents, down through the delta and out into the vast expanse of the Mediterranean Sea. For days, then weeks, it drifted, a lonely vessel on the waves, a symbol of order cast adrift in the chaos of the sea. Inside, the body of the god-king began its slow transformation. Meanwhile, his queen, Isis, was plunged into a grief so profound it shook the heavens. Upon hearing the news, she cut her hair, tore her robes, and let out a wail that silenced the birds in the sky. But Isis was not one to surrender to despair. Her love was a force as powerful as any magic. She began an epic, relentless search, wandering the length and breadth of Egypt, and then beyond, questioning every soul, human and divine, her sorrow a palpable force around her. She followed the whispers of the river and the tales of fishermen, her journey a testament to unwavering devotion. Her search led her to the coast of Byblos, in modern-day Lebanon, where a miraculous thing had occurred. The chest had washed ashore and become entangled in the roots of a young tamarisk tree. The tree, infused with the divine essence of the god within, grew at an astonishing rate, enveloping the coffin in its trunk, becoming a magnificent, fragrant tree that was soon cut down by the local king to serve as a central pillar in his palace, all unaware of the sacred secret it contained. Driven by divine intuition, Isis arrived at the palace in Byblos. Disguising herself as an old nurse, she sat by a well, where she befriended the queen's handmaidens. With her magic, she bestowed upon them an aura of such beauty that the queen, Astarte, summoned this mysterious woman. Isis entered the palace, her heart sensing the presence of her husband emanating from the great central pillar. She became the nursemaid to the queen's infant son, Demophan. Each night in secret, she would hold the child in the hearth's fire to burn away his mortal coil and grant him immortality. She would then transform into a swallow and fly around the wooden pillar, emitting haunting, mournful cries. One night, the queen discovered her child in the flames and screamed in terror, breaking the spell. Isis then revealed her true, radiant, divine form, blinding in its glory. She demanded the pillar. The terrified king and queen complied. Isis split the fragrant wood open, and within she found the chest. Letting out a cry of both anguish and triumph, she embraced the coffin, her tears falling upon the wood. She then revealed her identity and claimed the body of her lord, preparing to return him to Egypt for a proper burial. The return to Egypt was a somber journey. Isis hid the body of Osiris in the secretive marshes of the delta, seeking a secluded place to perform the rites that would restore him. It was here, in the quiet of the reeds, that she employed her most potent magic. Transforming into a kite, a bird of prey known for its piercing cry, she hovered over the lifeless body of her husband. The beat of her wings stirred the air, and her haunting calls became words of power. This was the first performance of the ritual of life, a series of spells and incantations so powerful they could reignite the spark of existence. Her magic, combined with her unwavering love, had its effect. For a brief, miraculous moment, Osiris stirred back to a semblance of life. It was not a full return to the world of the living, but it was enough. In this sacred, suspended moment, the goddess conceived a child. This son, conceived from death and destined for vengeance, would be named Horus, the falcon god. He would be hidden and protected, nurtured in the shadows to one day challenge the usurper and reclaim his father's throne. But the shadow of Set had not lifted. He was hunting, driven by a paranoid fury to ensure his brother's legacy was utterly erased. During a boar hunt in the moonlight, or in some versions by the light of the full moon, the treacherous god stumbled upon the hidden tomb. The discovery enraged him. He wrenched open the coffin and gazed upon the body of his brother, which, sustained by Isis's magic, still showed no signs of decay. A new, more terrible fury seized Set. He would not just kill Osiris, he would annihilate him. He committed the most heinous act imaginable to the Egyptian soul. He dismembered the body. With a brutal, ritualistic precision, he tore the corpse into 14, some say 16 pieces, and scattered them the length and breadth of Egypt. Each part, from his head to his little toe, was cast into the Nile, buried in the desert, or hidden in the deep marshes. Set believed that by destroying the body, he destroyed any chance of resurrection. He returned to his palace, believing his victory was now absolute, that the name of Osiris would fade into nothingness. The news of this second, more profound desecration reached Isis, and her grief was a new, sharper agony. But once again it was transformed into relentless purpose. She would not let her lord be lost. With her loyal sister, Nephthys, and other allies like the jackal god Anubis and the wise god Thoth, she embarked on a second, even more arduous quest. They traveled to every nome, every province of Egypt, searching for every fragment of the divine body. It was a painstaking, heartbreaking process. In some places, the local people, having found a piece of the god, had already begun to worship it, building a shrine around a finger or an ear. Legend says that wherever a part of Osiris was found and recovered by Isis, a temple was later erected, explaining the many cult centers across Egypt. One by one, the pieces were gathered, all except for his phallus, which had been eaten by the Oxyrhynchus fish, a permanent symbol of the loss that even divine power could not completely undo. With all the recoverable parts assembled, the gods performed the most sacred act in Egyptian mythology, the first mummification. Anubis, the divine embalmer, used his secret arts to cleanse, anoint, and wrap the body of Osiris in strips of the finest linen. Isis and Nephthys stood vigil as the mourning sisters. their lamentations becoming the prototype for all funerary dirges to come. Isis, with her profound magic, fashioned a replacement phallus of gold and spoke spells of life over the reassembled form. The rituals worked. Osiris did not return to the land of the living as a mortal would. His resurrection was different, more profound. He was transfigured. He awoke to a new, eternal existence as the Lord of the dead, the king of the underworld, the just judge of the soul. His green skin was no longer just the color of vegetation, but of life enduring through death. He rose to sit upon a throne in the Hall of Two Truths, where he would forever preside over the weighing of the hearts of the deceased, his own resurrection offering the promise of the same to all who lived by Maat. The legacy of Osiris did not end with his own resurrection. It lived on in his son Horus, the Avenger. Hidden and raised in the marshes of Chemis by his mother Isis, Horus grew strong and cunning. When he came of age, he challenged his uncle Set for the throne of Egypt. What followed was an epic conflict known as the contendings of Horus and Set, a struggle that lasted for 80 years and involved a divine tribunal before the Ennead of gods. The battles were fierce and symbolic. Set, in the form of a monstrous hippopotamus, would attack the solar bark of Ra, and Horus would defend it. In one brutal confrontation, Set tore out Horus's eye, and Horus retaliated by emasculating Set. The conflict was not merely physical. It was a legal and moral debate over the nature of kingship. Was it the raw, chaotic strength of Set, or the rightful, orderly inheritance of Horus? Finally, the Council of Gods and ultimately Thoth's wisdom decreed in favor of Horus. Maat was restored. Horus became the ruler of the living, the archetype for every pharaoh who would ever sit upon the throne of Egypt, each one being a living Horus. The victory of Horus established the eternal cosmic order. The living world Egypt was now the domain of Horus, represented by the person of the pharaoh. The realm of the dead, the beautiful and fertile field of reeds, was the eternal kingdom of Osiris. This duality became the core of Egyptian existence, but the connection between the two was unbreakable. Every deceased person, through the funerary rites and the judgment process, sought to become an Osiris. The most crucial moment in the soul's journey was the weighing of the heart ceremony. The deceased would be led by Anubis into the Hall of Two Truths, where Osiris sat in silent, majestic judgment. The person's heart, the seat of intelligence and morality, was placed on a golden scale against the feather of Maat, representing truth and cosmic order. Thoth, the ibis-headed scribe, stood ready to record the result. If the heart was heavier than the feather, burdened with sin, it was devoured by the monstrous Ammit, the devourer of the dead, a second, final death. But if the scales balanced, Osiris would speak the words of justification, and the deceased would be granted eternal life in his blissful kingdom. The cultural impact of Osiris is immeasurable, stretching far beyond the sands of Egypt. In the classical world, Greek and Roman travelers were fascinated by the cult of Osiris, syncretizing him with their own gods of the underworld and fertility, like Dionysus and Hades. The Hellenistic period saw the worship of Serapis, a composite god combining Osiris and the Apis bull, created to bridge Egyptian and Greek religious traditions. His image, that of a bearded, fatherly figure, spread across the Roman Empire. In the modern era, the myth of Osiris has proven endlessly resonant. It has been interpreted as the ultimate archetype of the dying and reviving god, a figure found in many agricultural societies. It has inspired operas, novels, and films, its themes of betrayal, love, and the triumph over death speaking to universal human experiences. The very concept of a final judgment before a divine figure has echoes in Abrahamic faiths. Osiris is not a relic, he is a living idea, a symbol that the most profound darkness can be overcome, and that life in some form always finds a way. And so we return to the stars from whence we began. The constellation of Sa, Osiris, continues its eternal journey across the night sky, a silent witness to the cycles he embodies. His story is the story of the Nile's flood, which retreats, seems to die, and then returns with life-giving abundance. It is the story of the seed, which must be buried in the dark earth to sprout anew. It is the story of the soul, which undergoes the trials of death to achieve a transformed existence. Osiris is not merely a god of the dead. He is the god who conquered death. He represents the profound Egyptian belief that existence is a continuous cycle of loss and renewal, of chaos threatening order, and of love and magic ultimately restoring balance. He is the green shoot in the black earth, the justified heart before the feather of truth, the silent king in his golden hall. He is the promise that even from the deepest silence, a voice can speak again, and from the final darkness, a light can dawn. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.